What came first, the chicken or the egg? Welcome back, everybody, to From Rhythm to Algorithm. Picking up right where we left off, working through our definition of sensorality. We are in the final stages. We're just connecting our final pieces, iterating the letters, doing the best we can. The answer will present itself when it does. Age-old question, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Does it have a distinct answer? And that kind of is the answer, right? So biologically, again, obviously logically, you get what it's saying. You can't have an egg unless a chicken lays it, but how did the chicken get there in the first place if it wasn't in the egg? So what comes first? Again, playing at the idea of dichotomy. But really biologically, what you could have is you could have a species that wasn't born in an egg, that is kind of a bird or kind of like a chicken, and then, because remember, evolution doesn't happen like I'm not evolving. An evolutionary jump from Charles Darwin, which is debatable how rigorous, his work is not rigorous at all, but how applicable it is. But evolution is not, it gives survival of the fittest, I guess would be his most poignant thing or thing he's known for. But the evolution, what is it? It's not me getting older, getting fatter, getting skinnier. It's evolutionary traits changing from generation to generation. And so you could have a chicken-like bird that has the evolutionary jumping, it gets born, and then it's the first bird-like thing to lay an egg. So the egg comes first, or you could have just an animal that already lays eggs, and then it lays an egg, and then the evolutionary jump was the chicken, right? So the evolution could either be the egg or the chicken. So there's no distinct answer. The point being is you can have questions that don't have definitive answers, even though the logic is legitimate. In the same way, you can generalize that more and say, again, I use stock market stuff because it's true, but it's accessible to everyone's intuition, right? You can have a lot of different factors that influence if a stock's going to go up or down. So chicken or the egg, it's that dichotomy of two, but it's indistinct. You can't give you a definitive answer, and then biologically, it could be either or. More a little bit on the fundamental theorem of calculus, because to me, the way I always remembered it, or again, maybe it was just me because I've derived this stuff already, but you start with something, right? You have a base, right? You have a position, then you take a derivative, you get a velocity, or you get a slope, or you get a tangent line. So you start with a position, and that's what we had to rework, right? Because it's a first order derivative velocity, acceleration is a second order derivative, right? And then so we said, what is derivative? Well, right back to our stocks, right? If you have a stock and you buy a stock option, the stock option is derivative. And so that logic is consistent. You have a base, you have a product, and there's something that has value because of that product. And so in the fundamental theorem of calculus as presented right now today, again, the intuition is the intuition, the physical reality is the physical reality. And then it's how do we talk about these different ideas? Or experiences. And so they present what's called an antiderivative. And so that is banned. It is hear ye. Nobody's allowed to say antiderivative ever again. Because you derive from a base. So if you have an antiderivative, that is logically, that's not even word salad, that's logically offensive. But don't say that at all. But the point being is you have to start with a position, or you have to start with something. And so when you define an antiderivative, right, if you take the derivative of zero, what do you get? You get zero. So what's anti-zero? Infinity? I mean, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And so antiderivatives is aids, but the reason that is defined is because you have your order of operations incorrect. You have to start with a base, then you derive from a base. I'm in this universe, there's a lot of information out there, I go out there and try to process as much as I can, and then I try to teach as much as I can to you, or to anybody else, or to myself. And so you're always getting, right, less and less. If you take a big block of something and you break it into a million pieces, all of those little pieces they can't add up to be more than the mass of what you started with. And so you have a very clear physical idea of what derivation is. You start with something and you break it apart. That's deriving. Base, then derivation, then integration. You break down all those pieces and you want to put them back together. That is integration. You add them up, all of the pieces that you derive from the base. And so you integrate the derivative to get the function, as opposed to you take the derivative of the antiderivative or whatever aids I got trying to read that on Wikipedia. That was very, very wrong. And so Antiderivative is hereby banned from all mathematics classes effective immediately. Sensorality calculates. Calculate, vibrate. Sensorality is calculationality. Sensorality is calculated. A gate is a sensor. Sensorality is rhythm. Speciality is vibration. Sensorality is rhythmic. Sensorality is algorithmic. Or sensorality. Right? We're trying to change our pronunciation. I don't really know if that has any effect, but it's, right, is it tomato, tomato, or is it actually bridging the syllability to a new concept? Again, all the things I don't return to, they're something I thought of, I had genuine intuition. Is it relevant to our axiom? Maybe, maybe not. It just depends on the next day. Wake up the next day and just refresh, restart, all from the beginning. Proof establishes truth, right? Eric Weinstein, if it rhymes, it's wrong. What does rhyming indicate in terms of how similar, how close it is, right? We're trying to, the function of language is to differentiate, to describe different things. So we're kind of, again, uniterating, working backwards that iteration, so we're getting more similar, but how does, again, proof and truth, those kind of rhyme, so they're kind of close, so you kind of see that rhyming function, but just in general, what does rhyming indicate? Is that they're similar, you're trying to differentiate farther apart. So something going on there, but again, there's a little bit of rhyme, but it's logically true. And then establishes, right? A is B, A establishes B, A assesses B. You'll see these different verbs that I use. All right, those are all instinctual, intuitive, those aren't random either. Can I formalize it? Not really. But if you see establishing stabilizes, right? That's a logical thing, it's a physical intuition, you can feel it, you understand what I'm saying. And then you look at the words and you clearly can see that establishing is based on stability. So we have a natural definition, but it extends logically. Mean, meaning, demeaning. Stable, stabilizing, establishing. Establishing stabilizes. And so what we're doing with this definition, again, is we're using it in enough context and then showing that, trying to find that word form that's undeniably true, even though, again, all of these things that we've done so far are still true, but they're not the home run, close this proof and be done forever, which will happen, whether I'm alive to do it or not. But point being is we have this one form of a word, stability, establishing, stabilizes. And if we use this word enough, right, if you're building a card house, and you have your one card and your other card, and you're trying to balance them, and it gets kind of difficult, but then you get that one that stabilizes, and then it's set. And then it's easier to do the next one. But that initial one you put together is a little wobbly. And so very physically, literally, when you establish something, you establish a card house, it's stable, it's stabilized. So remember, stability and efficiency, those are kind of like our overarching peak axioms, or just like all physical systems are working towards maximum efficiency is the kind of the overarching axiom of all physics. Or is the base of for. Doing some analysis of prepositions, position, preposition, why is it before position? Why is preposition preposition? Because again, it changes the direction of the logic. Sensorality is lawful, speciality is awful, right? Now we've just removed one letter and we've gotten a different word in a different context, different connotations. Now it's very clear that we're differentiating the connotation of speciality and sensorality. Sensorality has to contain speciality, it has to be distinctly different, and it's very clear to see the stark contrast of connotation. Speciality is bad, sensorality is good. Speciality is minor, sensorality is major. If you have a lot of things, you have stuff. Stuff is a lot of things. Connecting, again, another general word that is not rigorously defining what is stuff, it's completely general. All right, now we're in that concept of complete generality. We've worked through our physics, now we're just analyzing the words, the literal letters that we use to represent these physical concepts that everyone knows and is following along. And we say stuff, right? Stuff is a lot of things, completely general. And true, connecting another word that doesn't have ing to thing. Our fundamental noun, I guess. Sensorality is stuff. Position, disposition. Sensorality determines disposition. Sensorality is positionality. Speciality is dispositionality. Again, now we have another more differentiation just based on that position, where something located, disposition, your body language, your demeanor, meaning, demeanor. So again, like all of these things aren't random. Though any example that seems random, that's the intuition coming from me personally. But I've done this stuff intuitively to the point where, like, so when I did this the first time, I didn't even notice other people didn't do this whole process. Like, it doesn't even register. But disposition is demeanor, demeanorality, sensorality, and so now we have again that double negative. Position negated by disposition. It changes it to a new context altogether, and then demeanor. Right? Demeanor is not good or bad. It's neutral. And so, but you add or, right? Sensorality, demeanorality. So we have that or in there with a prefix of negation and a base word that is super malleable. But what is the meaning of demeanor? We've just derived that statement in its entirety. What is that logically equivalent to? Right? Any answers? What is body language? What is the meaning of demeanor? What is your body language? Logically consistent. QED, science. Actions speak louder than words, right? So again, I told you we're just connecting cliches. How many actions speak louder than words? And I want that to mean a very physical thing, right? Well, because words are emergent from actions. How many unique sounds are there? Talk about the phonetic alphabet. It's certainly finite. I wanted to say it was like 26. That just might be the letters of the English alphabet. But the point being is it's finite. And I've listened to enough. Personally, I've trained my vocal cords to go through all of them. It was literally like, when we talked about the African clicks last episode, that there's 4 distinct ones that I think I've heard, and there's only like one that I couldn't confidently articulate as of like 5 years ago. So I've mapped whatever the number is, how many unique sounds there are, I've mapped them personally. But how many are there? And just if you want to put a number on it, go for it, Harvard. How does motion produce these different sounds? Click, snap, whirl, whisk, swish, swoosh, shrill. If you throw rocks on ice and you hear that, I don't even know what to call it, right? We're at a point where it's like, what sound do you associate, what word do you associate to the sound if you take a rock and skip it on ice? And it's kind of like this hollow, boom, boom, boom. What is that sound? Right, so now we've literally derived to the base of sound through language, and you're clearly following what I'm saying. But what is that? There's a word for it: timbre or timbre or timbre or whatever you timbre in music. Right? If you play the key of E on a saxophone or on a violin, it's still the key of E. The sound is still distinct, but its sound has a different quality. That's speciality. The bass sound, that's sensorality. But speciality is timbre, sensorality, timbres, right? And now we're connecting that timbre to speciality, and then we're just directly iterating that R. And now it's timbre, right? And now it's a sound. It's onomatopoeia. What is timbre? Right? If something falls over and somebody yells timbre, what the fuck are you saying? And so this is really cool. I'm speaking English. Clearly you're following me logically, but we're truly at the point where we're at intuition. You know exactly what I say, then I say, what word is that when you skip a rock on ice? But now we've differentiated speciality and sensorality. Timbre, like the quality of a given instrument, versus timbre, like a lumberjack yelling a tree is falling down. Pretty cool. We're still not done. Order basis iteration. Iteration, proliferation. Again, proliferation, the base is life. That was a big connector there. Speciality proliferates. Life proliferates. But order basis iteration on that timbre versus timbre or timbre. What is the order? I wrote that down very intuitively. What is the order? What is iterating? Right, the letters are iterating. The sounds representing the sounds. And so, like, how does order relate to iteration? And then just finishing up, sensorality is proliferationality, right? Speciality proliferates. Sensorality has to contain speciality. Sensorality is proliferationality. And now we're going to get to one of these definitions where it's mean, demean, meaning, demeanor. Where it's like it goes from you just like remove one prefix and it goes from a negatively connotated thing to a positively connotated thing. We're so freaking close, and this has been so much of my life's work. And nobody gives a shit. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.